Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I just put half an hour for a little Dharma talk in this sesshin. Leading up to it, some sesshins for Rohatsu are completely silent. But I remember in my first experience, I really valued just a few words from my teacher at the time. So it'll be just a few words, but it's a subject that I am quite interested in, and I hope maybe it will be helpful to you. So tonight's subject is landscape, and then tomorrow night will be journey or path, and then the night after that will be those with whom we travel. So landscape is a very, very huge subject in the spiritual, religious, world religions. Enormous subject, and I really am only going to say a few words about it, but there are many, many scholarly works about the importance of landscape in our spiritual development, in our ability to reach toward something of the transcendent or awakening, whatever we want to call it. And of course, it's very real. We look out the window and we see the landscape that we are on, very much like Ryokan-san's landscape, by the way. His gogoan is in the midst of the woods. As we are here in Washington, we feel the ominous nature of the trees around us and the darkness that comes from being in the forest. And of course, the forest itself has symbolic nature, it's mystery, and what else can I say? It's full of mystery and the kinds of things that are hidden. And so we see it in our literature, Hansel and Gretel, for instance, which is maybe literature, but the forest is a big one. In our Zen landscape, the mountains are what we tend to look toward, and the metaphor of the mountains. And I want to say something about the desert first. And I'll just say it before we begin to go a little bit further in this. And it has to do with the current war in Israel and Gaza. So we know that terrain is this huge desert, the Sinai desert, the Sinai plateau, the Sinai, I guess the plateau. And my feeling is about it is that the landscape is so important to us, so important to the unconscious, that we don't really realize, aren't able to articulate what it really is. And we have the foundation of the Abrahamic tradition in that area, in the Sinai area. And most of us in America, not all, but most of us in America grew up in some aspect of the Abrahamic tradition, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. And that Sinai area is where it all took place. So even though we may never have gone there, we hold the image of that incredible, bleak, and open terrain. This is where Moses met God and received the 10 Commandments, where Jesus walked in the desert. Muhammad, met with God also on that desert. And it's the foundation for most of us, of our beginning spiritual growth. So even though we may not follow it at this point, it still is the foundation that somehow sits within us in a particular way. And that landscape has an enormous influence upon us. Certainly for Jews more than maybe the rest of us, or maybe not for Islam, and maybe not so much for Christianity, but it's got a huge underpinning in our imaging of original spiritual foundation. And to feel what is happening there now sort of climbs underneath the images of spirituality from that area. And it's the most difficult thing to hold. And it's so difficult to articulate for us. But I think that, or at least I feel, that to a great degree, that is our terrible, terrible uneasiness with what is going on, our terrible dis-ease. Of course, we didn't always have so many pictures of war, and now we can see them very readily. And so they affect us so deeply, because that landscape is so bloody right now. It is so painful, we can hardly hold it. So I feel that way about landscape. If we look out the window, well, if we just look in this room, this is a particular landscape in this room, in this place of practice. We'll come to that a little after, maybe. When we look out the window, we see the trees and we see the land that we are on. We cannot see that except that it is already in us. We are already that landscape. We can't see the landscape except that it is in us. So how we work with that, how we deal with that landscape, which is this right here, is one of thousands, is extremely important. Dogen Zenji talks about the landscape. He talks about, he says, mountains are walking. He has a whole big chapter on mountains are walking. We wonder, well, what does that mean? Is the mountain walking? Are we the mountain? Are we walking? So he plays with that back and forth, and the importance of the recognition that if we look at the mountain, we are the mountain. And the mountain is walking. If I sit here during Zazen and I see the waves of people sitting around the Zendo, it's like small mountain ranges, big tall mountain, a smaller mountain, mountains all different sizes. I think I got that from my very first teacher, Koban Chino Otagawa Roshi. Very first sesshin I sat next to Taigen Leighton. Maybe some of you know his name. And Taigen, I don't think it was his first sesshin, but it was a rough one. I had only been sitting 3 months, and I asked Koban, do you think it's okay if I sit? Do you think I'm ready? He said, oh, of course you are. Of course you are. Oh, it was brutal. It was so hard. And Taigen and I sort of held one another up through that sesshin. And one of the evenings of that sesshin, as I was going back to my room, Koban was standing outside and he encountered me. And I don't know what I said to him, but he looked at me and he said, you are a mountain. So forever now, when I sit in the Zendo, I see mountains. How do we practice and realize the landscape. And I'm talking about the real landscape. Tomorrow night we'll talk about the landscape of the inside, our own inner landscape, which is as extraordinary as the landscape. It's as real as that landscape. But in the world religions, this important metaphor of landscape is there because it is giving us pictures and images that are there to awaken us. They're there to give us spiritual steps to follow, to open to something greater than this most difficult world that we are in right now. Every religion, Buddhism too. Buddhism has angels and bodhisattvas flying in the air and the sky and in the heavenly realms, as well as we find in the Abrahamic tradition, angels and all kinds of things flying around. And those images are there for us. And we hold those images within us. And when we image that within us, it is as real as the painting you look at. It's as real as the trees on our property. It's hard to think about how we awaken ourselves. Well, how, the other question Dogen asks is, some monk looks at the mountain and wakes up, and then Dogen asks, well, did the monk wake up or did the mountain wake up? He always throws it back on us and twists it around. Did the mountain awaken or did that person awaken? What was the awakening? We have the landscape of Shakyamuni Buddha that we will celebrate on the 8th or on our last day here. We have the landscape of him sitting and the landscapes of the images that he went through in the temptations that he had leading up to the landscape of the sky and the morning star. And we hold that image, that landscape. It is one of the most apparent and starkest images that we have in our practice. The morning star. So I don't know how to say to somebody who is searching, oh, just look at the tree. Look at the tree, there it is. It's already there. It's just showing itself to you. You see the tree, you are already that tree. The thing about it, though, is that you can look at that tree 50 times. And maybe on the 50th time, you realize. That's the thing about practice. You don't know when the tree will awaken. There are other stories of people who want to investigate the landscape so clearly. They want to know every single piece of it. And there's a story of one man who decided that he was going to spend the summer traveling to learn the landscape. And by the end of summer, he had only gotten through half of his backyard because there's so much right at our feet, our own feet. So when I talk with people now, of course, people are saying, oh, it's so difficult for us. I don't know how to practice with the pain of our world that we are in. And I heard from someone this morning, I forget which sutra, but the Buddha is talking about, the hundreds of thousands of people that he is able to save, and that he has saved them. And he also knows that he didn't save even one of them. So we practice in this state of nothing, this state of not holding anything at all. And if we save oneself, if we even save our own selves, that's remarkable. And I'm not exactly sure what saving means anymore. Maybe I don't even want to be saved, whatever that means. I simply want to realize the world that I'm in and be in it and know that I'm in it. And again, I think the landscape has a big part in that. It's primary for Zen practice, the landscape. We have the landscape of Zen practice. We have the landscape of entering the door that we enter. It's the first gate that we come to when we come to practice. And we must go through that gate, not in a sweet way, not in some kind of manufactured way, not in some kind of rallying to have some kind of hoopla here. We have to walk straight through that gate. And then the myriad gates come after that. But we walk into a landscape, this landscape of this room, of this place of practice. We see all kinds of things around and so forth. And yet every single piece in this place of practice is designed for awakening. Its meaning is awakening. The zafu is in the meaning of awakening. It's the meaning of emptiness. Every single piece of it. And then we sit, of course, in the landscape that we see out the window. And then we see the landscape of one another. We see the landscape of the mountains. And we sit with huge landscapes going through ourselves today. Well, I venture to say that within the few people who are here, we probably visited 1,000 places. All of them real. We probably spoke to hundreds of people within ourselves in that landscape that we naturally engage in. And I think we don't realize how much we are touched by all that we visit, all that we see. I mean, as you know, this landscape that we are on was originally Native American. Nisqually natives lived here. The Nisqually had 13 different villages, and one of them was South Bay Village. And we don't know all that happened on this land, but we can imagine. We can imagine. But we also have on this land, we have a lake, another symbol. We mentioned it in the Ryokan-san poem this morning. I don't want to go through the whole poem, so I can. Streams, some streams, oh goodness. Who will hold the clearest lake? Who will hold the clearest in the lake of his mind? What does that learn? Where does it begin? Streams.
Moon, clearest moon.
The clearest moon in the lake of his mind. Thank you. Who will take that prize? It's not, the prize is not a competition. It is the point of awakening. Who will hold the clearest moon in the lake of his mind? So we have this lake here that reflects the houses and the land across the way. And it's almost as seeing them double sometimes. The lake is very feminine metaphor, a feminine image. And the lake is one of mystery. It is also the meaning of quietude, deep spiritual peaceability. That's not the symbol for Native Americans, however. So it's a very cultural matter that we have a lake in our Zen. It occurs now and then. Also in Dogen Zenji refers to the lake, but it's a very cultural matter. And that was not the case for Native Americans. So I hold the Native American view also here, which the natives didn't care for lakes so much because they couldn't navigate beyond them. And they preferred to navigate on rivers or streams. This particular lake that we are on has underground, it's an underground stream. And we also have underground streams on our own landscape here. So we have the deep water mystery and water, the most powerful element that we have. The water, of course, feeds the trees and the rest of the landscape and us. So it behooves us to sit in silence and allow the landscape to speak. The landscape of the birds, the frogs that we hear, that's all the landscape. And that takes image within us. So all of that is feeding into us. All of that is awakening us. The sky and the trees dripping and the frogs and the birds, all of it at once. So we don't have to go anywhere. Just listen to the landscape and see your own landscape, and let it teach you, let it teach you, let it teach us. Let it teach me is what I want to say. Let that landscape teach me. Just listen and see.